One of the biggest mistakes that I see all the time when I see Instant Pots out in the wild or at events or at people's homes, and honestly I make this mistake a lot of times too, is to forget to use the condensation collector on the back of your Instant Pot. The condensation collector on your Instant Pot lives just right here on the back, and it's just a tiny little plastic container like this. Sometimes you can forget to put it on here when you need to use it, like when you're cooking. It's especially useful after cooking because all of the condensation, anything like extra food, drips off into this little catch tray here, and then it goes into the condensation collector in the back. And so it's really important. Otherwise, you can just have like food, water, broth, whatever it is, just dripping out of the side or the back of your Instant Pot. And that can be not only a safety hazard, but you also don't want your food just like leaking out of your Instant Pot. In conjunction with that mistake is also forgetting to clean out the condensation collector. A lot of people forget that it's even there if they have it on there at all, and so they can forget to clean it out. It's really easy to just pop this little guy off and you can just dump the contents, and then I always just rinse it and put it in my dishwasher for a cycle, and then it's totally fine. But I have seen a lot of times where the condensation collector is full of mold or fat or just really gross leftover food because they forget it's there and it just collects and collects and collects and you just never clean it out. So definitely make sure to clean out your condensation collector and use it. The second mistake I see a lot of times is overfilling the Instant Pot. If you open up your Instant Pot and actually look in the liner, there is always going to be a max line in the liner that says PC Max, and that is the max amount of liquid or food that you can put in this liner for this Instant Pot to work correctly. If you overfill your pot, then what can happen is there's not enough space left in the actual pot to create that steam to make the pressure. If you don't have pressure, then obviously you can't pressure cook and it's just going to boil, 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 and it could even boil over, and then food can boil out of the Instant Pot while you're trying to pressure cook. Even if you get super close to the pressure max line, but you have something in here that is super starchy or bubbly like noodles or something that can bubble over like very quickly, then even if it's under the pressure cooking line, it can actually cause some issues when you open up the pot because there's so much pressure in the pot and it's just waiting to get out. And if you don't completely depressurize your pot, then everything inside the pot can spill out. I've actually had this happen when I got a little too ambitious making soup one time and I thought it's fine, it's going to be just fine. It wasn't fine and it actually did spill out. So please make sure not to overfill your pot. Definitely keep it under the max line. The third mistake is not using enough liquid. Most Instant Pots need at least 1 cup of water in order to generate enough pressure to pressure cook. Of course, there are some exceptions to this rule. I have some recipes on my website that use like 3/4 of a cup of water, but that's because the food itself that I put in the Instant Pot, like chicken breast or other foods that have a lot of water, actually like leach out water and it adds to that minimum liquid count. So if you don't have enough water, the water will just evaporate and it won't come to pressure, and then your food will most likely burn. Another way to think about this is if you have something too thick in the Instant Pot like chili or spaghetti sauce, or usually anything that's tomato based or something that's very thick, it's easy for it to burn. So you also need to make sure that the liquid that you have in your Instant Pot is thin enough to generate enough steam to create pressure. Number 4 is using a quick release when you should be using a natural pressure release, or vice versa. A quick release is when you quickly release the pressure out of your Instant Pot after it's done cooking, so then you can depressurize the pot quickly, open the lid, and take the food out. That works great for most foods, but there are some foods and recipes that you definitely need to use a natural pressure release. That just means leaving the lid on and letting it naturally depressurize at its own time in order for the pressure to just naturally, peacefully release and just let it come down. I talk about this all the time. It's kind of like if you have a soda bottle and you shake it up, and you want to either do a quick release and just open that lid and then soda will go everywhere, or you can just like crack it open just a touch and then it will naturally release that pressure. You definitely want that for recipes like large cuts of meat or anything that's starchy, because you don't want it to like explode and like have, not explode, but you don't want food to to go flying out of the little pin area because the steam and the pressure and the boiling like food is still kind of coming up here when it's done pressure cooking. So always use a natural pressure release for when you're cooking things like beans, anything that froths, large cuts of meat, or anything that has a lot of liquid in it. I like to give it a natural pressure release, or you can release the steam in quick bursts to kind of help like let the steam down quickly, but also staying safe. If you want more ways to love and use your Instant Pot, then check out my 2 Instant Pot cookbooks. The first one I have is called I Love My Instant Pot Cooking for One, and it has 175 recipes that are so good, that are single portion, but they're pretty generous, so they usually feed 2 people. And this can be found on Amazon or wherever books are sold. Our second book is called Enjoy. This is one that we self-published last year. It's 101 plus pressure cooker recipes for everyone. You are going to love this book because it is spiral bound, so it lays flat while cooking. There's a picture for every single recipe, a QR code on every single recipe that will take you to the full recipe blog post with tons of tips and extra information, or a full YouTube video. And it also has tips on every single page. There's also Instant Pot guides in there, never before seen stories and pictures, and of course, delicious recipes that you and your family are going to love. You can grab this cookbook on my website, triedtestedandtrue.com. If you use the code YouTube, you can get $3 off of the book, and you can get free shipping within the United States. I know you and your family are going to love this book and the recipes, so I hope you enjoy. Mistake number 5 is not deglazing the pot. This is something I see all the time in just cooking in general, but in Instant Pot cooking, it's very important. The reason is because in an Instant Pot, we can use one of my favorite features, which is the saute function. The saute function basically makes this device a hot plate or a pot, like a pot on the stove, and you can saute stuff before pressure cooking. After you saute or sear something, there's almost always going to be stuff on the bottom of the pot called fond. Now, fond are all those yummy browned bits of meat or veggie or whatever it is that you seared or sauteed that are stuck to the bottom of the pot. Now, we need to get rid of those brown bits off the bottom of the pot by deglazing with some liquid, either that's water or broth or some other kind of liquid, to lift all those brown bits of fond off the bottom of the pot. Otherwise, when it comes time to pressurize and pressure cook in the Instant Pot, those brown bits will burn, and then your Instant Pot won't come to pressure, and it will just be a really big headache. So please make sure to always deglaze the pot when you're cooking in just general, on the stove, whatever, but especially in the Instant Pot. Mistake number 6 is not adjusting the cooking time based on your food. The best example of this is when you use frozen cuts of meat or frozen food in your Instant Pot, always try and adjust that time by maybe an extra 5 to 8 minutes, depending on how thick or how cold the food is, because frozen foods and thicker foods obviously take a little bit longer to pressure cook. Conversely, if you have smaller pieces of food or vegetables or meat in the Instant Pot and the recipe calls for like a whole chicken breast or a whole potato, then you can cut down the cooking time to adjust it, because otherwise you might overcook or undercook your food. Always make sure you use a reputable thermometer. Of course, I always use my ThermaPen 1. That's the only thermometer and company and brand that I will ever trust with anything thermometer-wise, temperature-wise. And make sure you check the internal temperature of any meats or even vegetables, baked goods, in order to check for doneness. Number 7 is ignoring the burn warning. This is the worst when this happens, and it's happened to me several times, but it's not a big deal, but just don't ignore it. Sometimes if the liquid that you added into your Instant Pot recipe is either too thick or there's just not enough of it, then you can come up with a burn warning. Now, this means that something is burned on the bottom of the pot and there's just not enough surface area there in order to safely cook your food without it burning. If that's the case, don't ignore it. Definitely open up your pot quickly and find out what the issue is. Most of the time, you can just kind of move the food away and just see if there's something burned on there. And if that's the case, you'll want to just either deglaze the pot, you can change it into another Instant Pot liner with the same food and just make sure that the liquid is thin enough, or you can just add more liquid to the pot if you forgot to add it in the first place. Number 8, and this is one of my personal favorites, is storing the Instant Pot incorrectly. The incorrect way to store the Instant Pot is just like this, with the lid secured on as if you're going to pressure cook. Now, the reason why this is not my preferred method is because the Instant Pot really captures aromas and smells and flavors based off of the last thing you cooked in it. So this silicone gasket, this ring, can really absorb a lot of smells. And if you just lock this into your Instant Pot, the whole thing kind of smells like that if you store it that way. It's kind of like if you have a Tupperware and you wash it and it's clean and everything, but if you store it with the lid on, the next time you open that Tupperware, it's just going to probably just smell a little off. It's the exact same thing with the Instant Pot. So to mitigate this, what I recommend is to, one, take out the silicone sealing ring, make sure it's clean, of course, and I like to either store it in here, or for this purpose, I mean, I just have it in here. But instead of storing the Instant Pot with your lid on like this, I always take it off and turn it upside down, place it on the Instant Pot like this, and then store it away. That way the smells can all dissipate and there's kind of air flowing through here, so then it doesn't trap those odors in and make your cheesecake taste like last week's chili. Number 9, and this is something that's very common that I see a lot and that a lot of people write in, is the Instant Pot not sealing, so you're sealing it incorrectly. This sealing ring right here is very super important, and I've actually never had to replace my sealing rings, and I use my Instant Pots all the time. I've tested hundreds of recipes in here for both of my Instant Pot cookbooks, and so I don't ever think it's too much of like that it's too old, but just that it's not inserted into the lid correctly. So this sealing ring needs to go straight into the lid, and it has to be secure all the way around. It can't be lifted up on any one part of this little border right here. Otherwise, it will not seal correctly, and then your Instant Pot will like lose liquid because it's evaporating, and then it might burn. So it's very frustrating as a cook when it doesn't come up to pressure, and it's almost always because the sealing ring is not put in correctly and it's not sealed correctly. So you want to make sure that that lid is obviously on super tight and correctly, and that the sealing knob or button is always in the sealed position when you're ready to pressure cook. Hopefully none of you have made these mistakes, because I'm pretty sure I've made like almost all of those mistakes, and so hopefully you learn from that. If you like this video, make sure you watch this Instant Pot video next. I have a whole playlist. My whole channel started out as Instant Pot stuff, so I know you'll love it, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.